Hello, my name is Jesper, and for assignment 3, I read a peer-reviewed article on crowd testing. And the authors of this article highlighted difficulties with software testing in today's markets, which are very dynamic, with short product life cycles, high cost pressure, different platforms, including smartphones, computers, tablets, etc. This combined with the fact that these platforms have different operating systems with different versions make software testing efficiently very difficult. Different types of software testing can also be very difficult to achieve, such as functionality testing. Take, for example, you have a running app on a smartphone. You would need, obviously, actual runners to test this app properly, at least functionality-wise. And many companies today, especially small ones, might not have the ability or resources to do efficient in-house software testing. So how do we overcome this problem? Well, the answer, according to the authors of the article, is a testing tool called Crowdtesting. The concept of using the crowd is nothing new. You might have heard of crowdsourcing, which is the practice of obtaining information or input into a project by using the services of a large amount of people. This could be either paid or unpaid or have some other sort of incentive, and it's normally done via the internet. Crowd testing uses a similar approach, and it's a dynamic testing scenario where the testers are mostly concerned with the output for specific inputs or use cases. So this would be a type of black box testing, as the testers typically do not have access to the source code. Crowd testing can cover both functional and non-functional requirements, such as performance, reliability, and security. So this might sound a bit similar to beta testing, but it does differ in a few ways. Crowd testing, for example, has an increased scope, and you can use it throughout the development process rather than beta testing, which you would typically only use towards the end, just before the release of the product. Crowd testing is normally based on use cases, where the testers are given scenarios to complete and report bugs. New or unknown bugs are usually rewarded in one way or another, and some platforms use the incentive of first come, first serve basis to speed up the testing process. Crowd testing is also a bit more specific, and companies can use third-party services. Applause is one of them, and it can target certain age groups, gender, locations, etc. through its platform. To give validity to their research, the authors conducted 3 individual case studies on 3 different companies that used crowd testing in one way or another during the development of their respective system or application. Each one of these 3 companies were able to discover bugs that were not already known to the testing departments, and they were also able to verify functional as well as non-functional requirements. So I'm going to mention some of the other interesting findings each company had. So the first company was an industrial production company, and they used the approach of external crowd testing, where they basically contracted an external service of experts to perform the testing. They found that this overcame the capacity limits of their company, as they had a relatively small testing department. It was quick to set up and easy to use, and due to the nature of their application, which was meant to work on several different platforms across many different countries, they found it especially suited for functionality testing, as the external provider had access to testers in many different countries and over different platforms, etc. The second company, an insurance company, used the method of internal crowd testing, where basically the employees served as testers. And they were meant to test their new intranet system. The findings they had was that they found that it promoted high motivation among the employees, as they felt like they were being part of developing this new system that they would be using every day in the future. They also found that the acceptance, according to the IT changes among the employees, was better, as the employees felt like they were not being a new system wasn't being forced upon them, but rather they were being part of developing it and had a say in the final product. And interesting as well, they identified training needs among the employees to use the system in a proper way, which they were not aware of before the testing iteration. The third company was a banking company, and they also used the external method of crowd testing, but due to the nature of banking with sensitive information and banking is heavily regulated, they used their customers as testers, also of a mobile application in this case. They found this very useful as they didn't have to expose the software to the general public or, for that matter, to a third-party company. So there was no legal implications of the sensitive information. They found that this crowd testing also served as a new channel of communication with their customers, which they found useful. And it was also a great way of getting feedback for them. So in order to wrap this up, is crowd testing the solution to the identified problems? Well, I think it's certainly a solution, and I believe the authors of the article pointed this out quite clearly. As for the future, they did not have any discussion of any future development. As for myself, what I found interesting was the ability to discover problems that are not so obvious. For example, as I mentioned in the second case study of the intranet company, a lot of the testers pointed out that there were bugs in the homepage, but as it turns out, this part of the system is provided by third-party software, and there were no bugs. But it did identify the need to the company to train their employees in how to use the system properly. So with that, I say thank you for listening.